But my understanding is you got a six-pack of white women.
Now, if you don't know who Sean Diddy Combs is or why he's in the media so much lately, then I hope that rock you're living under is really, really cozy. But if you don't know, he's in court at the moment on prostitution and racketeering charges. Some really, really serious stuff, and he's looking at some serious time. In fact, he's been in jail since the time that he was arrested last year on all of these charges. Now, unfortunately for us, cameras are not allowed in the federal court there in New York. But we're getting some awesome up-to-date information every single day. But now the actual trial itself is starting, and what is pretty surprising record time. I purely expected this to be dragged out for a really long time. But anyway, jury selection has started. The trial has essentially begun. But a few questions have been raised today. Can he get a fair trial? Can he get a genuinely impartial jury? Now, we're going to have a look at that in just a little while. And the other thing that came up in the news today is that the judge in this case has actually admonished Diddy's lawyer for making some racist comments about the prosecution team in this. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the process here, essentially there's a jury selection phase. And during this, the jurors or potential jurors are all called up and they're asked certain questions either by the judge, by the prosecution team, or by the defense team. And basically any one of those people has the right to essentially say nope to that juror for whatever reason or for no reason at all, to a certain extent. Now, in this case, there's a potential pool, it's said, of about 150 jurors. And obviously, given this being such a high-profile case and Diddy being such a high-profile person, it's only normal that they would need a huge pool to select from. So some of these questions could range from, do they have any criminal history? Are they a fan of Diddy from the past? Have they, in the case yesterday, ever themselves or a family member been a victim of sexual assault? These are all things that are taken into consideration, including sometimes like the person's level of education, their competency to be able to actually sit through a trial like this. There's a whole host of things that come into it. So anyway, that process has now begun. There were so many jurors there today that even the press found it hard to get into the courtroom. In fact, even Diddy's family found it hard to get into the courtroom. Now, we're all used to seeing the images of him in, the standard prison jumpsuit. But of course, during the trial, he's actually allowed to wear what's, essentially normal attire. And today, apparently, he was wearing just like a blue sweatshirt, navy pants, and shoes without laces, as was ordered by the judge. Now, apparently, he looked quite unkempt, and, it's been said that throughout all of the previous hearings, he's been quite upbeat and maybe even a little bit cocky, which isn't surprising given the kind of individual that he always has been known to be. But in this scenario, he actually went so far as to tell the judge that he was feeling quite nervous and scared, which was a huge change from his previous attitude. So from the original pool of approximately 150 people, the judge had said that some of them were qualified and some weren't. They're essentially, it got down to a list of about 16 jurors were essentially selected by the prosecution. But essentially they need 45 qualified jurors to be able to continue with opening statements. That's how important this whole process is. So anyway, moving away kind of briefly from the jury selection side of things, the big kind of bombshell today was that the judge in this case admonished one of the lawyers, that'd be Mark Aragas, for some of the comments that he made back on the 2nd of May on the Two Angry Men podcast in TMZ. And I'm going to play that comment for you right now.
Correct. That's my understanding. I've only seen a couple of them, or know of a couple of them, but my understanding is you got a six-pack of white women.
So following up from that, the judge got wind of this whole conversation, and prior to going into court in the robing room, so this admonishment didn't take place in open court, but in the robing room, he had said, "That's something you shouldn't, that no one should be saying as an officer of the court and a member of the bar." Referring to the prosecution in this case as a six-pack of white women is absolutely ridiculous. I would just clarify that Mark Aragas is not actually an official member of Diddy's team, but he is involved with them essentially. But his daughter Tenny is serving on the legal team, and her father, Mark, the lawyer who we just saw, has been seen in court since the beginning of the trial. Now, the prosecutors had a bit of an issue with this. They wrote a letter to the judge basically accusing them of trying to consult with this particular lawyer. And that does raise some issues because they're doing it that way. If that is, of course, what they're doing, he doesn't fall under necessarily the same rules as the actual official legal team. Now, Mark has denied that he's involved with the legal team directly. Of course he is. He says he's there to support his daughter, who is, a friend of Combs or whatever. Now, so far, essentially half of the jury have been selected, give or take half of the 45 panel that are going forward to listen to the opening statements. So the ranges range from 38 to 87, and their occupations include an American Airlines pilot, a social worker, a kitchen designer, a physician's assistant, and more. 3 mentioned liking hip-hop music. Some in the group said they get news from the New York Times and NBC, while others cited YouTube and other social media platforms. Now, a few of the jurors, and this gets into the other part of this video, a few of the jurors were stood down. Some of them arrested for possession of marijuana. And in fairness, some of them were brutally honest when they were asked, will you likely use marijuana during the trial? They said they would, so they were stood down. Now, another guy was stood down because he admitted to reading some articles about the jury selection and what was going to be involved. So he was stood down for that one. And there's a whole heap of reasons why others may be stood down. They were kind of covered above. Now, that brings us to the next thing. Can he truly get a really genuinely honest to God fair jury trial? Well, off the rip, I'd say probably not 100%. Now, it could be probably not, but rolling either direction. Like, it could be in his favor because of his fame and fandom and all the rest of it, or it could go the opposite way. Now, some of the things that need to be considered in this case, and absolutely have been, are, as I said, the massive coverage. Of course, there's going to be huge coverage. He's one of the biggest hip-hop stars of all time, being indicted and put in jail for these really, really, really serious charges. Of course, people are going to have seen about. I would hazard a guess that there's not a single person in that panel that hasn't heard of who he is or why he's there. Now, one of the lawyers, Elisa Bloom, who is representing one of Combs's accusers, did raise a concern at the fact that there was quite a few people in the panel who seemed to really, really, really want to be there. Now, of course, you should all want to be there to do your civic duty, but they wanted to be there because it was the Diddy trial. Now, we see this in every high-profile trial, and those people get weeded out pretty quickly. But in this one, she was really blown away and has never kind of seen this type of behavior before. She said, it's so interesting to me, you know, what's different about this case than a lot of other high-profile cases, everybody seems to want to be in on the jury. And usually people are trying to get out of jury duty, which is a very good point. Now, another few people were saying that an issue in the interest of fairness here might be essentially his wealth, that people would be jealous. And then, of course, there's fans. Like, one potential juror said that she had actually pre-purchased tickets for one of his tours or a festival or something like that, but could still remain impartial. I mean, maybe she could. I don't want to say that that person is lying, but that's obviously something that you can't take the risk with, right? So you let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think he can genuinely get a fair trial? Now, I'm sure a lot of you have very strong feelings about the man and about the situation, but try not to let that cloud what you're going to comment. Think about it carefully. Can he truly get a fair, impartial trial, irrespective of who he is or why he's there, or whether or not you think he did it? Now, I'm going to be covering a little bit more of this trial. I won't be sitting there live streaming about it for hours, but I definitely will cover a little bit more about it. If there is anything that comes up that you specifically want me to talk about, let me know in the comment section down below. And let me know what your thoughts on all of this are. Everybody gets a voice here. Everybody gets a right to speak their mind here. But just try to keep it civil. Anyway, folks, thank you for joining me. That's the most talking I've done in about 5 days because I've been sick and had a sore throat and lost my voice. It's back though, baby. We'll catch you in the next one. Sláinte.